Armin sat quietly in the exclusive lounge of the airport, his mind half on business and half on the busy world moving around him. He was waiting for his private jet, which was scheduled to take him to an important meeting in another country. The billionaire had gotten used to this life: luxury lounges, fast travel, assistants running around with files, and people greeting him respectfully wherever he went. Yet in the middle of all this comfort, there were moments when his heart still longed for something simpler, something that reminded him of where he had come from. He leaned back in his chair, sipping a glass of water, when his eyes fell on the main waiting area of the airport. Through the glass wall, he could see travelers rushing, families hugging, and children pulling their parents' hands eagerly. He often enjoyed observing people like this. It reminded him of his early days, when he too used to travel in crowded economy class, holding his one small bag and wondering if he would ever make something out of his life. But then, something unusual caught his attention. On one of the long benches in the corner of the waiting hall, a woman was lying curled up fast asleep. Her clothes looked worn out, her hair untidy, and beside her was a very small bag that seemed to carry everything she owned. Armin's first thought was simple: another tired passenger, perhaps someone who had missed her flight. But something about her face, even from a distance, seemed strangely familiar. He leaned forward, narrowing his eyes, and for a moment, his breath caught. Could it be? The woman shifted slightly in her sleep, her hand tightening around her bag as though afraid someone might take it away. And in that moment, recognition struck him like lightning. That face, though now tired, thinner, and marked, with years of struggle, belonged to someone he once knew very well. It was Maria. Armand's heart skipped a beat. Maria had been more than just a maid in his house many years ago. She was like family. She had worked in his small home back when he was not yet a billionaire, not even close. Back then, he was just an ambitious young man trying to build his career, struggling with bills, failures, and endless doubts. His family had little, but Maria had always been there, helping his mother with chores, taking care of the house, and sometimes even quietly lending them money when she noticed the grocery jars getting empty. She was not rich, not educated in fancy schools, but she had a big heart and a work ethic that inspired him. Many times when Armin returned home after a long day of rejection and disappointment, it was Maria who would say, "Don't lose hope, sir. One day all your hard work will shine." Those words had stayed with him in his darkest moments, and then one day she was gone. He remembered coming home to find that Maria had left suddenly, leaving only a short note saying she had to take care of her sick mother in the village. After that, there was no news of her. Life moved forward. He worked harder, opportunities came, and step by step he built his empire. But sometimes, when success felt overwhelming and he longed for the simplicity of the past, he thought of Maria and wondered what had happened to her. And now, here she was, in front of him, sleeping on an airport bench like she had nowhere else to go. Armin's chest tightened. It was difficult for him to believe his eyes. How could life be so cruel? A woman who once helped his family in their struggles was now struggling herself, right before him. He stood up slowly, trying not to draw too much attention, and walked out of the lounge into the waiting hall. His expensive shoes clicked softly on the shiny floor as he moved closer. Each step made his heart heavier. He didn't want to disturb her, but at the same time he couldn't just walk away. When he reached near the bench, he stopped for a moment, simply looking at her. She looked much older now, though he knew she could not be more than her late 50s. Life had written its story on her face, the fine lines of worry, the tiredness in her closed eyes, the way she clutched that little bag as if it was her only treasure. Passengers around walked past without a second glance. To them, she was just another weary traveler, maybe someone who couldn't afford a hotel. But to Armin, she was Maria. Memories flooded back. He remembered her laughter in the kitchen, the way she always hummed songs while cleaning, the way she cared for his younger sister as though she were her own child. He remembered her scolding him gently once when he had almost given up on his career after yet another rejection. "Sir, life tests only those who are strong enough to handle it," she had said firmly. "You are strong. Don't let this world, fool you into thinking otherwise. It was strange how those words had come true. He had become strong enough to face the storms and build a fortune. But what about her? Why was she lying here alone without anyone to care for her? Armin felt a lump in his throat. He knew he had to do something. But first, he wanted to be sure it really was her. Slowly, he took a deep breath and whispered, "Her name! Maria?" The woman stirred slightly but didn't wake up. Armand leaned closer, his voice gentle yet firm this time. "Maria, is that you?" This time her eyes fluttered open. She blinked a few times, adjusting to the bright lights of the airport. At first, she looked confused, as if waking up from a long dream. Then her eyes focused on him. For a moment, she simply stared, not believing what she was seeing. "Sir?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Armin's eyes softened. "Yes, Maria. It's me. Armin." Her hand flew to her mouth, covering her shock. She quickly tried to sit up, embarrassed by her appearance, her wrinkled clothes, and her messy hair. She clutched her bag tightly and lowered her gaze, almost ashamed. I didn't want you to see me like this," she murmured, her voice breaking. Armand's heart ached at those words. He wanted to tell her she had nothing to be ashamed of, that she was still the same Maria who once gave him strength. But at that moment, all he could do was place a hand on her shoulder gently, assuring her that she wasn't alone anymore. Inside, he already knew. This meeting was not a coincidence. It was life's way of giving him a chance to return the kindness she once showed him, and from that very moment his next decision would change everything, not just for Maria but for everyone who witnessed it. Maria sat there on the bench, her fingers nervously gripping her small bag. She kept her head lowered, unable to meet Armand's eyes. For a few moments, silence hung between them, filled with emotions neither could put into words. Armand, dressed in his fine suit, looked every bit the successful man he had become, while Maria looked fragile and lost, almost like a shadow of the woman he remembered. Armand finally broke the silence, his voice calm yet heavy with emotion. "Maria, after all these years, I never thought I would see you again. I looked for you once, but you had disappeared without a trace. What happened to you?" Maria blinked hard, fighting back tears. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak. "Sir, I didn't want to leave like that. I wanted to stay, but my mother, she became very sick. I had no choice. I had to go back to my village. I thought it would be for a short time, but life had other plans." Armin nodded slowly. He remembered the note she had left behind years ago, the one that simply said she needed to care for her sick mother. At that time, he was so busy chasing his dreams, trying to build his future, that he had accepted her disappearance as fate. But now, seeing her again, he realized how much pain she must have carried all along. Maria continued, her voice trembling like a fragile leaf in the wind. "I stayed by my mother's side until the end. She passed away after a long struggle. By then I had no savings left. I had borrowed money for her treatment, hoping I could repay it later. But instead of getting better, things only got worse. I was drowning in debt, sir. The house we lived in was taken away. I had nowhere to go." Armin felt his chest tighten as he listened. He had known hardships, but hers were of a different kind, lonely, merciless, and unkind. He could see in her face the years of silent suffering, the battles she had fought without anyone by her side. Maria's hands shook as she went on. "I came to the city, hoping to find work. But I was older, and no one wanted to hire someone like me. They said I was too slow, too weak. I tried to work as a cleaner, sometimes as a helper in small shops, but even that was not enough to survive. Slowly, I lost everything. And now—" She paused, her voice breaking as her eyes welled up. "Now I have only this small bag. This is my whole world." She looked away quickly, ashamed to let him see her tears. But Armin didn't look at her with pity. He looked at her with the deepest respect. To him, Maria was still the same woman who had once encouraged him when he had nothing. The world might see her as a poor, broken woman, but to him, she was a symbol of strength. Memories of the past filled his mind. He remembered how Maria would often stay late at night, cooking meals even when she was tired. He remembered her simple advice, her steady smile, and her quiet faith in him when nobody else believed he would succeed. She had been there during his struggles, and now fate had brought her to him during hers. Armand sighed softly and sat down beside her. "Maria, you should have told me. Why didn't you come back to us? Why didn't you ask for help?" Maria shook her head slowly, her eyes still downcast. "How could I? You had dreams, sir. You were fighting for your place in the world. I didn't want to be a burden. I thought I would manage somehow. But life, it does not always go the way we hope." Her words pierced his heart. He wished he could go back in time and tell her that she had never been a burden, that she had been family. But now, all he could do was face the reality of the present. Armand placed a gentle hand on hers. "Maria, listen to me. You were never a burden. If I am where I am today, a part of it is because of you. You believed in me when even I didn't. You gave me courage when I wanted to give up. How can I ever forget that?" Tears finally rolled down Maria's cheeks. She covered her face with her hands, trying to hide her emotions, but her shoulders trembled with quiet sobs. For years she had carried the weight of silence, the pain of being forgotten. And now, hearing these words, the walls she had built around her heart began to crumble. People around glanced at them, curious, but most continued on their way. No one realized the depth of what was happening, that this was not just a chance meeting between a billionaire and a poor woman. It was a reunion of two souls, connected by the invisible thread of kindness and fate. Armand took a deep breath. Memories, flooding his mind like waves. He remembered one evening long ago when he had almost lost hope after another business failure. He had sat on the porch, his head in his hands, feeling like a fool. Maria had quietly placed a cup of tea beside him and said, "Sir, you don't fail because you try. You only fail if you stop trying." Those words had given him the strength to continue, and now, those same words echoed in his heart. He looked at her again, his voice steady but full of emotion. "Maria, I can never repay you for what you did for me and my family. But today, God has given me this chance to at least try. I will not let you suffer like this anymore. Not when I am here." Maria looked up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. "No, sir. You have done enough. You owe me nothing. I cannot take anything from you." But Armand shook his head firmly. "You gave me strength when I had nothing. You lifted me when I was falling. Now it is my turn, and this is not charity. Maria, this is gratitude. This is family." Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Family." The word sounded foreign to her, as if she hadn't spoken it in years. Slowly, her tears fell again, but this time they carried a strange mix of pain and relief. Armand sat there quietly beside her, watching the woman who had once been like a guiding light in his darkest days. Around them, the noise of the airport continued, the announcements, the footsteps, the chatter. But for Armand and Maria, the world seemed to pause. This meeting, unexpected and powerful, was no accident. Deep inside, Armand knew one thing clearly. He could not let this be just a passing moment. He could not walk away and leave her to this life of loneliness and despair. This was only the beginning of a story that fate had written for them both, and with that thought he silently promised himself. Maria's tomorrow would not look like her yesterday. Maria wiped her tears quickly, trying to compose herself. The people walking by barely noticed what was happening, but to her, this moment felt heavier than anything she had lived through in years. She had not expected to see Armand again. Certainly, not like this. To her, he was no longer the young man struggling with dreams, but a billionaire whose name was often mentioned in newspapers and on television. She felt small, almost invisible beside him, sitting on that airport bench with only a torn bag in her hands. Armand studied her carefully, his heart aching. He could see she was trying to hide her pain, but her tired face, her trembling hands, and her thin frame told him everything. She had been through battles no one had witnessed. He felt anger at life itself. How unfair it was that someone who had once given so much love and support was now reduced to this. He leaned closer, speaking softly so no one else could hear. "Maria, listen to me. You don't have to stay here. Like this. You will not sleep in airports anymore. Come with me. I will take you somewhere safe, somewhere comfortable." Maria shook her head almost immediately. "No, sir, please. I cannot go with you like this. Look at me. I am not the same Maria you once knew. I'm ashamed. I don't want to bring trouble into your life." Armin's brows furrowed. "Trouble, Maria? Do you think helping you is trouble for me? Do you know what you meant to me and my family? If anyone should feel ashamed, it is me, for not finding you sooner, for not being there when you needed help the most." Her eyes widened at his words. She wanted to protest again, but his firm yet gentle tone silenced her. For the first time in years, someone was looking at her not with pity, but with respect. That alone was enough to make her tears fall again. Armin gestured to his assistant, who had been standing at a respectful distance. The assistant approached quickly, holding his tablet. Armin whispered something to him, and within minutes, arrangements began to take place. A car would be waiting outside and a hotel suite would be prepared. But Armin did not want Maria to feel like she was a burden or a charity case. He wanted her to know she was valued, important, and remembered. Maria, however, continued to resist. She clutched her bag closer and whispered, "No, sir. Please, I cannot accept. I don't belong in your world anymore. I am just a nobody now." Armin placed his hand gently on hers, steady and reassuring. "Maria, you are not a nobody. You never were. Do you know why I worked so hard in those early days? Because you always reminded me I could. When people laughed at me, you told me to keep going. When I wanted to give up, you said that only the strong get tested. Do you know how much those words meant? They became the foundation of my life. How can you say you are a nobody when your voice still echoes in my success?" Maria's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. She had never thought her small encouragements had left such a deep mark on him. She had only done what felt natural at the time, supporting the family she worked for. To her, it was simple kindness. To him, it had been life-changing. Armin leaned back slightly, giving her space but not taking his eyes off her. "Maria, let me ask you something. If I had given up back then, if I had let failure defeat me, what would you have said?" She hesitated, then whispered almost automatically, "I would have said, 'Sir, you don't fail because you try. You only fail if you stop trying.'" Armin smiled faintly, his eyes moist. "Exactly. You see? Even now those words still come from you. Maria, I am not going to let you stop trying. Not when I owe so much to you." Her tears fell freely now. She looked around, embarrassed at crying in public, but Armin's calm presence gave her a strange comfort. For years she had been invisible, just another tired woman people passed by without noticing. And here was Armin, one of the richest men in the country, sitting beside her as if she were family. Slowly she lowered her guard. Her voice was softer now, almost childlike. "Sir, I don't know what to say. I feel like I don't deserve this kindness." Armin shook his head. "Maria, you deserve much more than this. You gave without expecting anything in return. That is true kindness. Now let me do the same." He stood up and offered his hand. For a long moment, Maria hesitated. Her pride, her fear, and her shame battled within her heart. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw not pity but genuine care, and that gave her the courage to slowly place her trembling hand into his. Armin helped her up gently, as if she were fragile glass. The assistant quickly brought a shawl to cover her shoulders, and together they began walking toward the exit. People turned their heads, surprised to see the billionaire walking side by side with a weary-looking woman. Some whispered, some guessed at who she might be, but Armin ignored them all. To him, the opinions of strangers meant nothing, as they walked, Maria's steps were unsteady. She was overwhelmed, almost dizzy with disbelief. She whispered, "Sir, people are staring. Please, I don't want to embarrass you." Armand smiled gently. "Maria, let them stare. If anyone should feel embarrassed, it should be them, for not noticing you, for not understanding your worth. Not you." Her heart ached at those words, but for the first time in years it ached with hope rather than despair. Outside, the car was waiting. The driver opened the door respectfully. Maria hesitated again, but Armand gave her a reassuring nod. She stepped in slowly, clutching her bag tightly. The soft leather seats felt strange beneath her, as if she had entered another world. During the drive, silence filled the car, but it was not the silence of strangers. It was the silence of emotions too deep to be spoken. Maria stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past, her mind swirling with questions. How had fate brought her here? Was this real or just a dream that would disappear when she woke up? Armand finally spoke, his voice steady. "Maria, I want you to promise me one thing. From this moment, you will not see yourself as a burden. You will not think you are alone. You are part of my story, and I will not let you suffer anymore." She turned to him, her eyes shining with tears, and whispered, "Why are you so kind to me, sir? The world is not usually like this." Armand looked straight ahead, his expression calm, but his voice heavy with truth. "Because you were kind to me when the world was not. You saw me not for what I was, but for what I could become. That kind of kindness is never forgotten." Maria lowered her gaze, unable to respond. Her heart was full, of pain, of gratitude, of hope she had not felt in years. For the first time in a very long time, she felt that maybe her life was not over, that maybe there was still a chance for new beginnings. As the car drove into the night, carrying them away from the airport, Maria realized something she had never expected. She was no longer alone. And perhaps, just perhaps, tomorrow could be different from yesterday. The car glided smoothly through the city streets, the glow of streetlights flickering past the windows. Maria sat quietly, her fingers still clutching the strap of her worn bag, her eyes shifting from the passing lights to the leather seats that surrounded her. Everything felt unreal. She had spent nights sleeping on benches in crowded bus stops and even on cold pavements, yet here she was, sitting in the back seat of a car that most people only saw in magazines. Her heart was restless, caught between gratitude and disbelief. Armand glanced at her from time to time. He noticed how uncomfortable she looked, how she pressed herself against the corner of the seat as though she didn't belong there. He sighed quietly, realizing that it would take time for her to accept kindness again. Years of hardship had built walls around her heart, walls that only patience and love could break. Finally, the car stopped in front of a tall hotel, its lights glowing warmly against the night sky. The doorman rushed to open the doors respectfully. Maria froze for a moment, her eyes wide as she stared at the grand entrance. She whispered nervously, "Sir, this place is too much for me. Please, I cannot go inside. People will laugh at me." Armand turned to her, his voice calm but firm. "Maria, no one will laugh at you. You deserve comfort. You deserve rest. Please trust me." With trembling steps, Maria allowed herself to be guided inside. The marble floors, the chandeliers, the polite greetings from the staff, everything felt like another world. She tried to lower her head, afraid of people's stares, but Armand walked beside her confidently, making it clear that she was his guest. Soon they reached a suite prepared for her. The room was spacious, with soft beds, warm lights, and a view of the city glowing outside. Maria stood at the door, unable to move. Her eyes welled up as she whispered, "I have not slept in a proper bed for so long. I don't know if I even remember how it feels." Armand placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Tonight, you will sleep peacefully. No noise, no fear, no cold floor. Just rest." Her tears spilled as she stepped into the room. She touched the soft blanket with her worn fingers as though afraid it would disappear. For a long while she said nothing, only stood there silently, overwhelmed by emotions. Armand let her have that moment before speaking again. "Maria, Tomorrow morning, I want you to meet someone. I have a foundation, an organization that helps families, children, and people who are struggling. I want you to work with us. You have the heart for it, and I believe you can make a difference." Maria turned to him in shock, shaking her head quickly. "No, sir, I cannot. I have no education, no skills for offices. Who will accept me?" Armand smiled gently. "Maria, you underestimate yourself. Do you know what true education is? It is kindness. It is patience. It is wisdom from life. You have all of that. My foundation needs people who understand pain, who can comfort others. Who better than you?" Maria's lips trembled. She wanted to say no, but deep inside she felt a spark, something she hadn't felt in years, a sense of being needed. But fear still gripped her. What if I fail? What if I cannot do it? Armand's eyes softened. "Maria, didn't you once tell me that you only fail if you stop trying? If you could believe in me when I had nothing, why can't you believe in yourself now?" Her tears flowed again, but this time they carried hope with them. She whispered softly, "You still remember my words?" "Of course," Armand replied with a smile. "How could I forget? They shaped who I am today. And now I want you to use that same strength to help others. I will guide you. You are not alone anymore." The silence that followed was heavy, but not with sadness. It was filled with the weight of possibilities. Maria sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, holding her face in her hands. For years, she had lived only to survive. Now, for the first time, someone was telling her she could live for more. Armand gave her space to think. He didn't pressure her, only left her with gentle words. Before leaving the room for the night, he said, "Maria, tomorrow is a new beginning. Sleep well. We will talk more in the morning." After he left, Maria lay on the bed staring at the ceiling. The softness beneath her felt unreal, like she was floating. She hugged her small bag to her chest, still unable to let go of the only thing she had carried through her struggles. But slowly, as exhaustion overcame her, her eyes closed. For the first time in years, she slept deeply, without fear of being woken by cold winds or the footsteps of strangers. The next morning, sunlight streamed into the room. Maria woke up, blinking against the light. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered the night before, Armand, the car, the hotel. She sat up quickly, almost panicked until she saw the tray of breakfast on the table, neatly arranged with fresh fruit and warm bread. A note beside it read, "For family. Armand." Her eyes filled again, but this time with quiet joy. She ate slowly, savoring every bite, each taste reminding her how long she had gone without such comfort. Later, Armand arrived to take her to his foundation's office. Maria hesitated at the entrance, nervous about meeting people. She whispered, "Sir, they will think I don't belong here." Armand reassured her. "Maria, this place belongs to people like you. Come." Inside, staff members greeted her warmly, following Armand's lead. He introduced her as someone very special, someone whose life experience would guide the foundation's mission. Maria was surprised by their respectful smiles, their kind words. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as a beggar, not as a burden, but as a human being with value. Armand showed her around, explaining the projects they were working on: support for poor families, education for children, shelters for the homeless. As he spoke, Maria's heart stirred. These were the very struggles she had lived through. She understood the pain of losing everything, the fear of having nowhere to go, the loneliness of being forgotten. She realized she could speak to people from a place of truth because she had lived that truth herself. At one point, Armand turned to her and said softly, "Maria, do you see now? You are not useless. You are a blessing. You will change lives, just as you once changed mine." Her throat tightened with emotion. She whispered, "Sir, I don't know how to thank you." Armand shook his head. "Don't thank me. Just promise me you will believe in yourself again. That is enough." Maria looked at him, her eyes shining, and nodded slowly. For the first time in a long, long time, she felt hope blooming inside her. She was no longer a forgotten woman at an airport bench. She was Maria, the woman who had once lifted a young man's spirit, and who now was being given a chance to lift many more. That night, as she sat by the window of her hotel room, looking at the glowing city, she whispered to herself, "Maybe this is my second chance." And deep inside, she knew Armin's gesture had not only changed her life, it had given her back her dignity. Weeks passed, and Maria's life slowly began to change in ways she had never thought possible. Each day at the foundation opened a new chapter for her, a chapter filled not with despair, but with purpose. At first she was shy, keeping her head down and speaking only when necessary. She still carried the fear of being judged, the fear that people would see her as nothing more than a poor woman saved by luck. But the staff welcomed her warmly. They listened when she spoke, they asked for her thoughts, and they treated her with respect. Slowly, Maria began to find her voice again. She started working with families who came seeking help, mothers who had lost everything, children who were hungry, men who had been broken by life's hardships. When Maria spoke to them, her words carried weight. She didn't speak from books or training. She spoke from her heart, from the pain she had lived, from the nights she had cried silently on cold benches. And the people listened because they saw their own reflection in her story. One afternoon, Maria sat with a young mother who had tears streaming down her face. The woman had lost her job, and her 2 children hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. Maria gently held her hand and said, "I know how it feels when the world seems to forget you. I know the shame of having nothing. But listen to me, you are not alone anymore. This place is for you, and one day, you will stand strong again." The young mother looked at her with wide eyes, hope flickering where despair had lived moments before. That was Maria's gift. She didn't just comfort people, she gave them courage. Armin often visited the foundation, and each time he saw Maria's transformation. She was no longer the fragile woman curled up on an airport bench. She carried herself with quiet dignity, her eyes brighter, her smile returning. Watching her heal while helping others gave him a deep satisfaction, something no amount of wealth had ever given him. One evening, after a long day at the foundation, Armin invited Maria to his home for dinner. It was the same home where she had once worked, though now it was renovated and grander than before. As Maria entered, memories washed over her. The kitchen where she used to cook, the living room where she had once scolded a younger Armin for skipping meals, the garden she used to water. Everything was different yet familiar. Armin's family greeted her warmly, treating her not as a maid from the past, but as an honored guest. His sister hugged her tightly, saying, "Maria, do you know how many times we wondered where you had gone? We missed you so much." Maria's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of happiness this time. For years, she had believed she was forgotten. Now she realized she had always been remembered. During dinner, laughter filled the air. Armin shared stories of how Maria had kept him motivated in the toughest times, and his family nodded, remembering those days with fondness. Maria, though shy at first, slowly joined in, her heart warming at the realization that she truly belonged. After the meal, as they sat in the garden, Armin spoke to her quietly. "Maria, do you see now? Life may have taken you through storms, but it has brought you back to safe shores. You are not alone anymore, and you never will be." Maria nodded, her voice trembling but steady. "Sir, I don't have words to thank you. You gave me back my life, but more than that, you gave me back my dignity. That is something I thought I had lost forever." Armin smiled gently. "Maria, you don't need to thank me. I only returned a fraction of what you gave me years ago. If I stand here as a successful man today, it is partly because of you. And now you are giving hope to so many others. That is the greatest gift." News of Armin's gesture had already spread widely. People at the airport who had seen him lift Maria from that bench told the story again and again. Soon, newspapers picked it up, writing about how a billionaire had reunited with his former maid and changed her life. But what touched people most was not just his act of kindness, but the fact that Maria herself was now helping others with the same compassion she had once shown him. In interviews, Armin never called it charity. He always said, "It is not about giving money. It is about giving back to the people who once lifted you when you were down. Real wealth is measured not in numbers, but in the lives you touch." Maria never liked the attention, but she accepted it because she saw how it inspired others. People began reaching out to the foundation, wanting to volunteer, wanting to help. Many said they had been moved by Maria's story, a story of suffering, survival, and second chances. One day, a little boy at the foundation tugged at Maria's hand and asked, "Auntie, were you really sleeping in the airport? Is that true?" Maria knelt down, smiling softly at him. "Yes, child, it is true. But do you know what I learned? Even the darkest nights don't last forever. Morning always comes." The boy smiled back, as if he understood, and at that moment, Maria realized that her pain had not been wasted. It had become the bridge for others to find hope. As months passed, Maria became an important part of the foundation. She organized food drives, comforted families, and inspired the younger staff with her resilience. Though she lived simply, she was content. For the first time in years, she felt she had a home again, not just in a building, but in the hearts of the people she touched. One evening, as the sun set in golden hues, Maria stood on the balcony of her modest apartment that Armin had arranged for her. She looked out at the city lights and whispered a prayer of gratitude. She thought about the long road she had walked, the nights of hunger, the tears of loneliness, the airport bench where she thought her life had ended. And she thought about the moment Armin had called her name and given her back her identity. She smiled softly to herself. "I was lost, but now I am found. I was broken, but now I am whole again." For Armin, life went on with meetings, deals, and travels, but he often said that no success in his career had ever given him the peace he felt when he saw Maria smile again. To him, that smile was a reminder that wealth meant nothing if it wasn't used to heal and uplift. Their story became a lesson to many, that kindness never fades, that gratitude lasts forever, and that even in the busiest corners of life, fate can reunite hearts in the most unexpected ways. And so, the woman who once had nothing but a small bag and a broken spirit found herself with a family, a purpose, and a future. The man who once had only dreams repaid his debt, not with money, but with love and dignity. Together, they showed the world that the smallest acts of compassion could create the biggest miracles. Maria's journey from despair to dignity was not just her story. It became an inspiration, proving that no matter how low life takes you, kindness can lift you higher than you ever imagined.